Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. But Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. A little pumped up. U.S. is 1-1 away from advancing to the next round, and of course, also the news that my Giants sign that I'm pumped for that signing today after work, noticing it on Twitter, and of course, it was a great night.
You mentioned the Giants making a great signing. That we have just, stories all over the place today, as obviously one of the biggest stories in sports we're going to be talking about today, that Aaron Rodgers made his intentions known that he wants to go to the Jets. So we got that. We got your Giants not only signing a big middle linebacker to help that defense out and give Wink Martindale another weapon to use, but they had a big trading for former All-Pro tight end from the Raiders, Darren Waller. This is a guy that's had big seasons in the past, so another weapon for Daniel Jones. And we got just Mets injuries, Yankees injuries. We got to talk about that great Ranger win last night that you provided a little bit of commentary on. And, another big win for the Knicks last night in Portland. Man, we got a lot to get into today. This is one of our most stacked sports show of the year so far. So, let's just kick it off with the top story of the day. We'll start off with the football. That's right. It's the Ides of March. It's March 15th, and we're still talking about football. As today at 4:00 actually was the official beginning of NFL free agency. And obviously we've had deals go down the last couple of days. Giants going out there and signing middle linebacker Bobby. Now I'm going to butcher his last name. I think it's Okikari. Could be that, something like that. I forget how to pronounce this guy's name, but he's a very good middle linebacker that the Giants picked up. They also traded for Darren Waller, former All-Pro tight end. Obviously, we know with the Jets, they traded for they will be trading for Aaron Rodgers. They're finalizing a deal for free agent wide receiver Allen Lazard, also formerly of the Green Bay Packers, good friend of Aaron Rodgers. So we see where that's going today. Now, Dan, did you get a chance to see any of this Pat McAfee interview with Aaron Rodgers today?
Yeah, I saw it. There's I'm hearing all this drama, list of demands, all this. Is the trade going to happen? Is it going to happen yet? What are the Jets are still in negotiation on the terms of the trade? It's like a lot of drama. I'm surprised Larry David's probably losing what little hair he has left.
Well, Larry David, if he was losing his hair over it, could definitely feel a lot better today, because the last couple of days have been very, very stressful. For me as a Jets fan, I have been locked on my phone for feels like weeks at this point, just waiting to find out. And, we've been told the whole time by all these guys who you usually can trust, like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, and these guys from the NFL Network, even Diana Rossini has been good lately from ESPN. And we have been led to believe for quite some time now that the biggest holdup in these negotiations between the Jets and the Packers and everything else was Aaron Rodgers. Oh, is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? What decision is Rodgers going to make? Does Rodgers even want to A, keep playing, and B, play for the Jets? And we found out the answers to all of those today is yes, he wants to keep playing. Yes, Aaron Rodgers wants to play for the Jets. And, that is something that until today, when he came out on McAfee and made his intentions known, as we see on the bottom line there, we see that Aaron Rodgers wasn't the holdup. The Green Bay Packers wanting better compensation apparently was the holdup, as we've been hearing from people like Boomer Esiason and Trey Wingo for the last week or two that Rodgers is done. And Rodgers said that he officially gave notice to both teams last Friday. So they've known for just about a week now that that the guy that Green Bay wants to move on from is ready to go to the Jets, and he's ready to accept any trade that they were willing to do. But now the holdup is apparently the asking price. Supposedly, Green Bay wanted a deal along the lines of what the Detroit Lions got for Matthew Stafford, which would start off with 2 first-round draft picks, which is just absurd for a 39-year-old guy that you don't even know is going to be around for more than 1 year. What do you think, Dan? I think the Jets can pull this off without giving up, any crazy draft compensation. What do you think, Dan? Do you think they're going to have to give up that first-round pick to get it to get this done?
No way do I see. I think they got this in the bag, right? Even though seeing this has reminded me, it made me realize that Jets fans are going through what we remember happening with Carlos Correa going to the Mets. It's looking like shades of that. Only I hope you guys got a different outcome, because I was like furious when that thing didn't. I was like, "Don't talk to me today." The next day at work, like, "Don't talk to me." After that whole thing went south.
Yeah, it's true, man. And the thing that you said there is what I've been running through my head for a long time now, because I've been saying here on the show for weeks at this point that I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the next Jets quarterback. They just have to give it time and just let it develop, let it make his mind up. Well, the time has passed. He made his mind up. Now the only thing hinging on this trade is the Jets and the Packers working it out. That'll happen. The Packers are going to kick and scream. They're not going to get what they want, and they're going to take what they can get. So there's not going to be an issue there. It'll all be worked out. I feel like the trade will be completely done by the end of this week, the latest. I keep hearing people bring up, they're going to have to wait till June 2nd. I mean, I'm not saying that's 100% not going to happen, but I would think more than likely there's no way the Jets and the Packers are going to wait until June to finish this trade off. So there's that we have to remember too. The other big thing that we found out throughout this whole thing, and actually, as a matter of fact, I do have a portion of the interview here. Let's take a quick look at this, Dan, and see what Aaron Rodgers said for himself, how this whole thing unfolded. So we'll take a look at this. Aaron Rodgers on
I'm not exactly sure what that was, but something changed. And I got back to my phone after 5 days off of it, because your phone's not on the entire time. There's no Wi-Fi on that, hippie mountain. And when I got back to that little shack they have where there's one bar of Wi-Fi, and got back to the, hundreds of text messages and emails and all different things, I realized that there'd been a little bit of a shift. And that I heard from multiple people that I trust around the league, players mostly, that there was some shopping going on, that they were interested in actually moving me.
So right there, Rodgers is talking about how the feeling before he went into the darkness was that the Packers were just going to let him decide and leave the ball in his court. But he says he feels like by the time he came out of the darkness, the Packers had already moved on and wanted to see what they have in Jordan Love. And as he said right there, we're shopping him, around the league to see what they could get. let's just jump right back in this real quick, and then we'll continue.
At this point, I got to admit, I went in the darkness, 90% retiring, 10% playing. That's where my mind was. My mind was, I'm tired of this. I hadn't got back into my workouts yet, and I thought that was what was best for me. So I went in the darkness to contemplate a lot of different things. But one day I spent entirely on the reality I was retired, and one day I spent entirely on the reality that I was coming back and playing, and just really sat with that for hours and hours. What that looked like, what the reality is, how that all felt. And when I came out, I was really interested in what the kind of landscape was, where Green Bay was at, and obviously if I wanted to play, what were the options? So it was clear to me at that point that although the Packers were going to say the right thing publicly, that they were ready to move on. And again, I don't know what changed that or what moved that. If they just said, hey, we need to make a decision here because he hasn't made a decision yet. Again, there's no victims here. I'm not sitting here as a victim. I love Green Bay. I love the fan base. They're incredible. I live for playing for them and for Lambeau.
Hell yeah.
A lot of love for the organization. I just think I wish that in the beginning of the offseason, that had been the conversation.
So there you have it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers pretty much said himself there that he thought that the Packers were going to allow him to make this decision himself. And then he feels like by the time he came out that the decision had already been made for him. What do you think about this, Dan? Do you think that the Packers are doing anything wrong by Aaron Rodgers here? Or do you think that this is just one of those situations where, both parties are, even though it didn't sound like, in all fairness, that Rodgers was quote unquote ready to move on, because he did sound like under the right circumstances, he would have preferred to retire a Packer. But do you think that, maybe this is just one of those situations where it's time for both parties to move on?
But looks at it, it sounds like that. Exactly like that. Also, I don't know. I'm kind of intriguing of seeing what one of those darkest places are like as a goof.
Yeah, I could see that. It would definitely, it was really interesting too to hear him talk about that today too. They were even talking about on the McAfee show how it was when he was taking a crap in the darkness there. Now I'm glad there's not any video of that or anything, because nobody wants to see that. But man, it would be really interesting to see what the inside of that darkness retreat looks like, because they even actually had a former NFL player on there today who was asking Aaron Rodgers, it pretty much sounded like a jail cell. Like they knock on your jail cell at 6 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock at night, whenever it was. He didn't specify, and they kind of slide that food under your door, and that's it. So it was very interesting to hear him talk about being in there today, and he said he was in there for 4 full days.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. I think I could only do one night in that place.
Yeah, like 8 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that, and only at one of those places has a shower or something, because I don't want to. Because trust me, I can't fathom what going to the bathroom was gonna be like in that place without freaking making a mess of myself and going to the bathroom in the dark. That's a scary proposition.
Yeah, it definitely is, and you just got to hope that's either a really big toilet they have, or that Aaron Rodgers has really good aim, because there's definitely a lot of missing going on there. But so when you look at the whole landscape now, let's just assume that this Rodgers trade goes through, because to be honest, it would make the Mets losing Carlos Correa look like, a walk in Central Park on a beautiful day, if this doesn't end up working out at this point. And
I'd be having to go there. Kramer, don't worry, you're gonna live. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, you would definitely have to be breaking out the defibrillator and to zap me as as George Costanza once said, you'd have to zap me back into coherence just from finding out this kind of news if anything falls through with this Rodgers trade. And so let's just assume that this trade gets done. Now, there are a lot of really interesting things that can come from it. Obviously, the Jets are going to be a much more interesting storyline all season. The Jets and the Giants play this year, so that's something to keep in the back of your mind. You know, I've been really looking forward to the Jets schedule now. When you look at how things unfold, really going to be, you know, after the hired expectations for the Giants this year, after their playoff run last year, and the obviously higher expectations for the Jets now with the acquisition of Rodgers. That's going to be a big time game for the first time since 2011 when Victor Cruz, he's probably still running for that 100-yard, that 99-yard touchdown that sent the Giants onto another Super Bowl run and kicked the Jets' ass out of the playoffs on Christmas Eve that year. You know, so it's going to be a really cool thing that's going to be a meaningful game, right?
Yeah, that's going to be an exciting game. Also, I got an interesting story about that game. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, I felt like, aside from the time that I had COVID, that was the most sick I felt. Like I was like congested up the wazoo. I could not even talk. I may have sounded like Marlon Brando in The Godfather if I could talk. Like, how do I talk? It was like I cannot describe the other. They think it may be similar to some of the COVID effects that when I had COVID, kind of what that felt like. But it was like I felt like weak. It was like my mother didn't want to believe I was sick. My uncle didn't want to believe I was sick. Maybe freaking go there for Christmas Eve dinner in Long Island. Thank God they got us a cat back, whatever. But I didn't want to. That time I knew right up the bat, that's not a good idea going to Christmas Eve dinner. I mean, you, mom. I said, Mom, Shannon, my sister, it's her name, Shannon. You two go. You do go. I really don't feel it. They didn't want to really. They thought I was playing around, not sounding so well, but I was sounding horrible. When I was there in Long Island, somehow I managed to pull off eating the Christmas Eve dinner, but I was feeling weak. They realized, yeah, you're right. They realized I was right the whole time, how horrible I was feeling. Even my cousin realized it. My oldest cousin was realizing how bad I sounded that night. So like, and then Christmas Day, I can tell you it's the worst. It's happened three times I was sick on Christmas Day. That one, the time I had COVID, and 2021 I had a cold. So it was it's not a fun time being sick around Christmas time, but that was the only good thing about the game. Even though I was like barely really felt. I don't know. I just felt like I don't know how to describe the thing, like just up to watching the game, and it was like the a rare time you see me like not making a lot of noise watching my Giants win like that. But I watched the game, and I was celebrating, of course, and I kind of like gave a wave to Malunigan, and they just looked. They knew I was happy, but they knew by the look on their faces I was not in a good state. That day, how sick I was, but that was not a fun time. That was not a time to go realizing.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you this much, man. You know, you said that, you know, the only time that you were feeling worse was when you had COVID. I'll tell you this much. I had COVID, and even with COVID, I'd rather have COVID twice than watch that game again and watch Victor Cruz run down for 99 yards to kick the Jets out of the playoffs, because oh man, that was that was as bad as it gets. Although I guess the 10 years of obscurity that followed it was even worse because at least that game meant something in December, which, as me and you talked about a lot late last year, both of our teams really haven't had much in recent years, but your Giants definitely had a lot of meaningful football in December and January this year. And you know what, as we move on from the Rodgers talk, let's go with your Giants, man. As we mentioned at the top of the show that the Giants went out and they're trying to tweak and add to this roster. They already got two of their big pieces back. They brought back Daniel Jones on a long-term deal. They brought back Saquon Barkley on the tag. They got back even Sterling Shepard. They didn't let him go. And they also bring in middle linebacker Bobby Okereke, and they trade for tight end Darren Waller from the Vegas Raiders. And I just want to put up some of the Darren Waller clips just to get you Giant fans salivating right now. And this is the guy that your GM went out there and brought in to be a tool, another little weapon for Daniel Jones. And you got to be feeling pretty good about that right now, man. I mean, the Giants haven't really had a big-time playmaking tight end maybe since the Jeremy Shockey days.
Yeah, I'm like pumped for this. I'm eating my post-work oatmeal, and I was pumped. Like, I was like shocked. Like, I'm shocked this stuff didn't come out of my mouth. Like you're shocked when you see this news. Like I was celebrating that when I got that news. Eating a little breakfast after work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you, man. If I was a Giants fan, I'd be celebrating too, because realistically, when you look at it, first off, quarterbacks like Daniel Jones, you need that safety net of a good, versatile tight end. And that's a weapon that, even mediocre quarterbacks can take advantage of. And Daniel Jones is a very good quarterback. So to give him a weapon like that, especially with the legs that Daniel Jones has, I mean, they're going to have defenders on him. There's going to be guys that at sometimes Waller's going to get lost in the shuffle. And that's when he breaks free and gets a big catch and can be that difference-making tight end that we've seen over the last couple of years. Now, the one downside with this Waller trade is that he has been injured the last couple of years. He's actually only played in 20 of his last 34 regular season games. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. But I will say that, I mean, I'm not going to be, if I was a Giants fan, I would not stress over that, just because, the Giants are taking the chance, and you only gave up a 3rd round pick for him, right?
Yeah, so it's not that bad of a low risk, high reward deal. I feel like this one's going to turn out big time. Of course, I get nervous during the preseason because I feel like football's the most rough preseason of them all. Like, we hear it all the time. Players have gotten injuries that have hurt seasons during the preseason.
Oh yeah, and keeping him healthy, that's one thing. As I can relate it to baseball real quick for a second, and maybe they'll take a page out of this for the Giants too. One thing I did like this year so far in spring training is that Buck and the Mets, and I guess the World Baseball Classic probably played a role in it, that they're taking their time with guys like Nimmo and Marte, who were banged up at the end of last year. Marte got even beamed in the head the other day. Thank God he's okay now. But, he had to have double groin surgery. He was still recovering from the broken hand. So they've taken their time. And only in the last less than a week has Marte been brought into the Mets lineup again. And he's played very well right out of the chute too. And it's the same thing with Brandon Nimmo. They're taking a very slow approach. So maybe during training camp next year, you want to get Waller in for all the OTAs. You want to get Waller in and to get him a rapport with Daniel Jones and the offensive line and everything. Maybe meet Daboll and the offensive coordinator and figure things out. But maybe in the preseason, you don't see him on the field as much to try to, do that load management thing that we hear a lot about in the NBA and stuff, where they don't want, you don't want this guy to get hurt in a preseason game. That's the last thing in a game that doesn't matter. You don't want to lose the game for the rest of the year, just like the Jets did a couple of years ago, when they lost Mosley in the preseason and everything. So you really want to keep your guys healthy. And I could see Daboll and the Giants being really smart about that. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I feel like that's what we're gonna be seeing a lot during preseason. It's gonna be like maybe low, maybe you only see him maybe 1 quarter, maybe 2 quarters if you're lucky. But you're pretty much not going to see him much of the preseason aside from during the practicing.
Yeah, you're probably right about that, man. I mean, I would assume that he gets a little bit more time than he'll probably see some action in preseason games, but I can't see it being for more than a series or two, because especially with a guy with an injury history like this, you don't want to waste those bullets, in a game that doesn't count. So the Giants, that's the thing that really does stink about NFL preseason these days, is that most of the work is being done on the practice field, like you just said. You're really not seeing these guys in a game situation anymore, and they only play 3 of them. So I don't know, man. It definitely isn't the NFL training camp and preseason of the old days, but hey, that's what you got to do with these guys. You have these high-priced athletes that some of them are injury prone, and you have to protect them, especially the guys that you think are going to be a difference maker on the team. And a guy like Waller can be that, man. I mean, some of the seasons that he had in Oakland are some of the best tight end seasons that we've seen. I mean, in the last decade at least. He's up there. He's got numbers like Gronkowski. He's got numbers like some of the Hall of Famers that you can think of. So it'd be really it was definitely a good move. When you first saw that move, Dan, did you think to yourself at all that maybe they should have used this like these resources, this 3rd round pick, who this is the Chiefs pick that the Giants got for Kadarius Toney. So it's interesting how that worked out. But what did you think? Did you think that tight end was a good spot for the Giants to start on and helping get some more weapons for this offense?
Yeah, yeah. That was the move they needed to make. They needed to make it, and they made it. And this team's gonna be for real. I think they're just gonna go. They're gonna go up one more notch in this year, and they got a one up last year without a doubt.
Yeah, no doubt about it. After you have, and that's the thing that stinks about success, once you have it, everybody expects you to constantly repeat it, and not only repeat it, but do better and go further after that. So, you have to make sure that you keep up with that. And I think the Giants are heading in the right direction. And between Shane and Daboll, I think the Giants have the right guys making the decisions now. So Giants fans can definitely rest easy at night. You have a better defense and you have a better offense now with just 2 key moves right there. So you can't argue with that. And, with that, I do want to move on. And, we'll save, since really, honestly, the baseball stuff, we got the World Baseball Classic going on, a bunch of injuries for the Mets and the Yankees, which we can touch on a little bit later. But before we get into the baseball stuff, we'll finish up with that today. Let's get into this Rangers game from yesterday, as the Rangers beat the Caps 5-3 at Madison Square Garden last night. Really, really good game for the team. They needed it. They came out in the first period and set the tone. And, before we get into all the other stuff, Dan, because obviously the Disney Channel and the cartoon, Big City Greens, all that stuff, we'll get into that in a second. But just purely on the game and how badly the Rangers needed that win, what did you think of how the team came out last night?
Oh no, I just felt Lakers came out in full force for that game. Like they were pumped, they were ready, they just came flying out of the gate for that win. All right, there may have been a little bit of a brief scares, but they looked like they were not letting those scares to get to them. Like they were not letting this game get out of reach. I mean, this was like, I mean, we all talk about the games against the tough teams that against the teams that are also contenders, but some of these teams that look like they're not really making it or they're like on the edge of making it, they can be a bit scary. I meant to take an analogy there in baseball, as Keith Hernandez said, second division teams, but that happens in every sport where you get those second division teams and you, they can be the tough opponent. They can be some of the toughest opponents during a regular season, and we 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 held our own, and we won. Also, maybe something maybe wanted me to maybe say some. I don't know. You may have heard me get a bit salty on the TV at Tom Wilson, of course,
Yeah, everybody is
because
salty at Tom Wilson, that asshole.
yeah, that's true. I feel like previous generations prior to 1994. I mean, a lot of Ranger fans older than me, they all know the Potvin sucks chant. I feel that's this generation's Potvin sucks chant is the Wilson sucks.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. And the thing too with the Rangers last night, and you mentioned it a little bit last night, a little bit too, is that they really came out flying and set the tone in that first period. And yeah, it got a little scary at the end where they made it close, but the Rangers held on. And obviously we caught a break last night too. We have to acknowledge that Ovechkin, I don't know what his problem was. I think he was sick or something like that. But for whatever reason, Alexander Ovechkin was not available last night, so the Rangers did catch a bit of a break that way. I thought we saw really good stuff out of Shesterkin. I mean, you look at the 5-3 score, and it doesn't exactly blow you away defensively. But when you see that two of those goals, one was a power play goal, the other one was point blank right in front of his face. So you could really only hang one of those three goals on Lundqvist, which is another thing that we have to focus on too, unfortunately, with the Rangers defense.
You accidentally referred to him at Igor as a Lundqvist.
Did I actually say that?
I'm so used to saying that.
It's ingrained in my head. It's just like with the City Field. I'll still call it Shea every once in a while,
Yep, exactly. I always hear that story not only from our announcers. I mean, Howie Rose, Gary, Keith, and Ron. Had the when they made that mistake the first couple of years. But I heard Howie Rose talk about how several local announcers in various cities sometimes make that mistake when when the teams move into a new ballpark. They accidentally said that. I think I personally I went to, as you know, I went to see the Practical Jokers live at the UBS Arena. First time I saw anything at that venue when they went to see that that very hilarious, always a hilarious comedy show the Jokers pull off in addition to their TV show, of course, that we all know. But when I went, my mother accidentally called it the Nassau Coliseum.
And that's understandable. That's understandable.
Yep. All of that when she was like saying to my sister where I was going, she accidentally called it a Coliseum.
Oh man, well yeah, the old barn isn't around there anymore, but it's still here. It's still going pretty good actually, but no more hockey, no more big shows like that anymore.
So unfortunately, we don't get to hear Steve Summers refer to it as the Nassau Mausoleum, which I've gotten so used to told it that every time. Sometimes I've gone there, I've accidentally said this. I've accidentally said that.
Oh, I used to love that, man. And I live right down the road from it too. I live maybe about 10 minutes away from the Nassau Coliseum, so I would always call it that.
And of course, it's also a nice little place by the Coliseum. You can get a good deal on guns, also.
Very true, very true. Right across the street, right next to Corbet's bar.
Yeah,
And
blink longer.
Linger longer, exactly. But yeah, so also too, I did want to get into, as you were the reporter for the show last night, as you took it upon yourself to incorporate the thing they were doing last night onto our show today. As I'm sure most of our fans and people that watch the show aren't really familiar, and I mean, unless you have young kids, with the cartoon Big City Greens.
Yeah, exactly. I had to ask a friend, the kid, about the. I was able to find somebody who. I wasn't kind of thrilled about the idea of this concept. I do got to say, it was a neat little. The technology was impressive, but and at the same time, I thought at least they could have used something like a cartoon I would recognize or something like. But like well, for one thing, personally, I think if they were going to do that like that, I kind of would have liked to have seen that recreated with Looney Tunes, just to see Tom Wilson get the Wile E. Coyote mishap.
Yeah, that would be great, man. And but I think it's interesting how they used it, because I do think, like you said, they did a really good job of incorporating the technology and aspect of that. Really, really crazy how that worked out, and how what's going on the ice was reflected instantaneously in this cartoon. It came across pretty well too. I mean, there were a lot of people that were very complimentary of everything that the NHL did with this last night. And let's show you a little bit of it, as our intrepid reporter Daniel Bobo Kurlan gets us a couple of images of this right now. Let's see.
Well, the commissioner, Gary Bettman's a joke anyway.
I did love that one when you sent that to me last night, and you're just like, Gary Bettman, he's a joke anyway. So what this was the beginning of it last night, right?
Yeah, what they did is they kind of, and bear in mind, after work, I did go on my DVR to watch the regular broadcast, because I had to see what the regular broadcast of some of these moments looked like, especially that Mark Messier was in the booth, but for the regular broadcast, ESPN feed. But this feed that I was watching yesterday of the game, I just said, well, basically what the concept is, they tried maybe making it sort of look like an episode of Big City Greens, that sort of looked like that the guy was making a call to the commissioner for the game to be played outdoors in their city square, which, from what I've researched on what this cartoon is that it's a fictional depiction of New York City, and that's supposed to be a depiction of Times Square, which kind of I can't see no way that would actually be able to be pulled off in real life. As you can see in one of the clips, I was saying I don't think no way like a city location like Times Square. I did hear that in the past the NHL looked at possibly holding an outdoor game in the Great Lawn in the Central Park. That actually sounds like a not bad idea, to do a Winter Classic like that, Great Lawn in Central Park. I would buy a ticket to see that.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. That'd be awesome, no doubt about it. So I didn't realize that too, that it was supposed to be like a fictional New York City. But I guess it makes sense too. They got the Rangers in there now. But
Yeah,
I do want to just jump right into this next one that you sent. So this is how it looked.
Nintendo Wii game.
So I mean, now what did you think of it? I know you mentioned to me what you thought it looked like last night.
Yeah, I said this looks like Nintendo Wii graphics, maybe Switch graphics. Reminds me of the little like the little avatars you could create with the Twitch, like on Wii Sports. I compared
Yeah.
it to Wii Sports, which by the way, the Wii Sports baseball, like all the little Mii's, I wound up back at they tried creating all the characters, the host. I think I even tried recreating what I thought would be like what Chip Chipperson would look like, and I remember once playing Wii Sports, and it was like this virtual thing, and it's like me, Chippa, for me, whatever, virtual Chippa, and me back to back home runs, and I kind of got reminded of Jim Norton's John Sterling impression. So my my mom was like kind of laughing at me yelling out, "They're doing that impression, back to back, belly to belly."
And belly to belly.
Shut the fuck up, Susan, is what I said.
Oh man, I love it.
I actually do remember once at Boston a woman that sounded like Susan Waldman at a liquor store, and me and my sister we actually had to. I was holding my breath, not laughing, because I'm trying not to laugh at this liquor store, because we're buying some wine for somebody, for someone wants wine, and
Oh my god.
me and my sister walk out of this liquor store because of this woman. Like we're trying not to laugh at. We're laughing. When we walk out, we're laughing. Like this woman sounded like Susan Waldman. The best way to describe it.
Oh my god, that's fucking hilarious. That's an unfortunate woman too, by the way. But here's the next clip that you sent over.
Don't really know much about the characters they're using, but what I do know is that if they tried anything like this in the middle of a location like Times Square as they're depicting here, I'd be safe to say that that people would be bitching and moaning about the inconvenience it caused.
You're right about that, man. And the funny thing too is that you could it's like you doing your own Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, and that's like more like I'm just trying to say this like spontaneously. If you've ever, I don't know if you've ever watched one of the little. There's some videos from back in the day that show a little behind the scene footage of MST3K, and they mention how they kind of rehearse those lines. Apparently they actually have like they have a little timestamp above the screen to try to get the time. They're the lines at the right mark. Of course, the lines kind of come out spontaneously when they're watching the movie, when they go through multiple watch throughs of the movie. Like they'll watch the movie once and then they'll watch it again to kind of come up with the lines, and they kind of have to go through multiple to get the right point. But even though the show looks like it was like, these lines were spontaneously, they did come up at random from the people, from the writers and the people watching the movie when they're going through multiple watch throughs of the movies, which sometimes I have to admit it's got to be a little bit torturous. Some of these movies, they have to go through so many watch throughs of it to create these episodes that just make us laugh almost. Sometimes we've watched them so many times.
Oh yeah, it definitely takes a lot of dedication to do things like that. Now, and it took some dedication for you last night, buddy, to jump right into this Big City Greens thing. Now let's check out this next clip that you sent over.
Escape zoo animals. That would be a blood. Real life, let's just say that'd be a bloodbath. I don't think anyone would survive.
You talking about the fictional animals being there? If they got out, that would be a bloodbath. When you sent it over to me yesterday, I was laughing my fucking ass off.
Exactly. That's literally what I'm thinking when I'm seeing that they decide to depict all of a sudden all of the zoo animals escape from the zoo and are trying to go watch this outdoor hockey game taking place in the middle of the city, the center of the fictional city in that show, and I'm thinking like, oh my god, escaped zoo animals. If something like that happened at the Bronx Zoo, the zoo animals escaped. I think that whole place would be a bloodbath. Like, it'd be a miracle if anyone survived. There'd be people on like the news. There'd be people like, for example, you'd see someone like on Channel 11 News saying, "Oh my God, the horror is like, I was. This was just an innocent time. I'm excited to see this outdoor hockey game in Times Square, and all of a sudden, it was like horror. I don't know if anyone survived." And then injuries I got. That's what would be happening if a situation like that happened in real life.
Oh, you're right. Especially if it was the Bronx Zoo, you're right. It would be even more fucking crazy than New York City normally is, and it's usually a bloodbath there these days. But now let's move on to this next clip. We got this one and one more.
Game, I'm calling all the people, putting all the people in charge of this NHL, the network, in on Shizer list.
Yeah, that one cracked me up because you're right. It looked like near the end of the game that a couple of people were going to have to be put on that Shizer list, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I was under the conspiracy. I was under the that the game was going to be rigged just for a team that they felt like. I was under the pressure Gary Bettman or the people in the network, they're just salivating at, here, we really would have fun with this. If this game goes into overtime, we'll really get the most out of this concept, this experiment that they were doing. So it's like I kept fearing that that this was going to be rigged because they badly wanted it to go into an overtime shootout. They wanted it. They just badly were celebrating at the fact to depict this with this animation.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I could definitely see them wanting that to go into overtime, no doubt about it.
Yeah. But I do got to say also one thing about that. But I'm not really a big fan of the idea. Like I did say, the technology I thought looked cool how they were able to pull that whole thing off, and even the fact they were able to get the way they were motion captured the broadcasters for that. What I do got also is that if that was something that was happening, if I was like, if I could somehow be transported into that world and seen a chicken referee as they depicted the referee being a chicken, I'd probably say, oh, that's a new way to take my frustration out on the ref. I could just kill it and have someone at KFC cook it up KFC style.
Or you could be like Peter Griffin and fight the big chicken.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be an interesting way to get angry at a ref. Speaking of like them trying to use a cartoon to recreate this, if you were to see that, not that I want to see them do this again, but if they were to pick an NHL game in a cartoon form, please leave in the comments what cartoon would you want to see a game recreated using.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's a good idea. Me and you were talking about a couple of others last night, like South Park, and what was the other one we mentioned?
I said Looney, a fun one to see recreated, and South Park. I think even The Simpsons would be a fun one to see. But I just feel like the way humor could be injected into it, just was leaning toward Looney Tunes would work I could see some humor injected into that, and South Park definitely I could see some humor injected into it. Like maybe like let's say to pick Kenny at South Park, to pick Kenny as the ref, and somehow he gets killed as a ref.
I could see that, and I could see a lot of people not having too many problems with that. I don't think there will even be anybody saying, "Oh my God, they killed Kenny."
So, yeah, actually, be even funnier. They get to pick like Kenny accidentally ended up on the ice saying getting ran over by a Zamboni. I think would feel more South Park like for Kenny to get killed.
You're right.
Game. Speaking of a little fact about South Park, I forgot what year it was that the NHL All-Star Game was in LA. The creators of South Park, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, actually presented everybody that was in the All-Star Game was presented with a picture of themselves animated South Park style with the South Park kids.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. They actually still have some whenever the Kings score a goal and everything, and whenever the Kings try to get the crowd chanting "Go Kings, go," they still have a lot of South Park stuff in there. So maybe those guys are Kings fans.
Yeah, they are, but that's got to be a neat thing that they did, that for those NHL players to be able to have that, like a picture of themselves as a South Park character with the South Park kids. That's a cool little print that those old NHL All Stars from that year got, I have to say.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's a really cool thing to go home with. And just to finish up with the hockey, I do want to play this last one. Oh, is this the last one? I think this is. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's see this last one.
To be fair, I think this really was a dumb idea, but at the same time, I gotta say, it is impressive the job that they were able to do this, pull this off. But really, don't try doing anything like this again. The NHL, ESPN, whatever company that does this broadcast, don't do this again.
Yeah, I just wanted to show that one because I thought it was kind of cool how they had the announcers looking, like you mentioned with Kevin Weeks. I'm not sure who the other guy was, but very cool that they had those guys, being captured too as characters as well, right?
Yeah, there's one little flaw about them, about the animation. I think they should have tried to. They didn't bother even recreating any kind of goal celebrations in done something like that. Like animate a goal celebration. And another thing, when they're interviewing, like remember how they kind of put some characters from this show into place of some of the players, and being on the Rangers, I forget the name of the character. I gotta look it up again, name of the character. But when they're interviewing him, they should have animated him since he was on the Rangers and he had won, and the Rangers had won. That character should have been animated wearing the Broadway hat.
That's not a bad idea, actually. That's definitely not a bad idea, man. As definitely a pretty cool thing that they did last night. Although I do tend to agree with you that it'd also be nice if they didn't do that again. But to be honest, I saw a lot of Rangers fans last night that I know that have kids that said their kids were loving it. So very cool.
And I even saw some people said that the NHL missed a marketing opportunity to sell like Rangers shirts with those characters on it. For like some of them said that their kids would have loved the Rangers shirts with those characters on it. I heard that on Twitter. Also,
that's a good point
about the concept of using different style of cartoons for that. I actually think like I could see Tasmanian Devil as a goon on a team.
That's a good idea, and I'm sure that if they ever do that with Looney Tunes, that Taz should be included as that. No doubt about that, man. So we're coming down to the end here. We a couple minutes left before we get out of here, though. I did want to touch on obviously me and you've been doing a lot less baseball than we normally do. But don't worry, everybody. We'll be getting back into the baseball train sooner rather than later. Because as a matter of fact, actually, I'm going to be down at spring training next week. So when we're doing our show for the next 2 weeks following this, I will be on site at the Met Spring Training Complex. So that'll be very cool. We'll be definitely getting into a little bit more baseball after this show, as finally NFL free agency is past us, and this whole Aaron Rodgers debacle is in the rearview mirror as well. What are you saying, Dan?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That definitely bring me back spring training and a pin from spring training. Because if you're gonna go to spring training, at least bring me back a little bit of that, like with a pin and a program for spring training.
No doubt about it, buddy. I'll definitely be grabbing you something. You know it. As my co-host, I'll be coming back with a little gift for you. No doubt about that.
Of course, also that show you're going to be doing for Port St. Lucie, just to try to capture some of those warm weather vibes. I'm going to bring out what I call, you've seen me wear the Magnum PI style Met shirt. I'm probably going to be drinking a Corona on camera, just to try to get some of that warm air.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Let's do it. And, hey, so let's touch on some of the baseball real quick before we get out of here. As, we do have some news breaking the last couple of days.
I gotta get
What's
my
the matter,
power.
Dan?
I'm just grabbing my power bank for a second.
Okay, no problem. So I'll just start this up a little bit as you grab your power cord. So this news just broke within the last 2 or 3 days. Well, actually, it came out about late last week that Jose Quintana was suffering from. They really didn't specify. First, they were saying bruised. Then they were saying potentially broken ribs that he had, fractured ribs. And it just didn't sound good. The Post, out of nowhere, then reported that he would possibly be down for the first 3 months of the season. Now we hear that it could be even longer than that, as Jose Quintana, apparently, as you see in the bottom, they found a lesion on his rib. Thank God the lesion is benign, so it's not cancerous or anything like that. It's not anything right now but uncomfortable for him. It was removed, and they are performing a surgery, like a fusion type surgery, to kind of fix that rib now that they got rid of the bad part of the rib. Now they so obviously we wish a speedy recovery to Jose Quintana, but the question that this opens up now is, where do the Mets go from here? They do have some starting pitching depth. We've been seeing David Peterson pitch great. We've been seeing Tyler McGill pitch great. They have a couple of other options in Eliezer Hernandez and a few other guys that are hanging out around there. What do you think, Dan? Who do you lean towards taking the spot of Quintana in the meantime?
I think like Tyler McGill, before that injury, he looked like he was gonna be fire as a pitcher. Like he kind of reminded me a little bit of DeGrom when he first came up with the Mets. Like he was just this rookie. We didn't really know anything about him, and like wasn't sure. But then he just surprised us, and he just had this composure of not being phased by it. I could also see an argument for Peterson also, who pitched pretty decent. I feel we could be fine in this, and if anything, and I'm pretty confident Steve Cohen is gonna not stand idle during during a trade deadline, because we can't we got to make a big move, and if that move needs to be a pitcher, it's gonna have to be. But that'll all depend where all the circumstances with other teams where they are and where we are at the trading deadline, of course. But I feel when that's not going to be a major problem. But it's like so Mets that we just get this pitcher and he's like, we don't know if we're going to even see him during the season. Like I think by the time next year, I might be forgot this guy even existed.
Yeah, kind of like Joey Lucchesi, who's a guy the Mets picked up, another left-hander a couple of years ago. He pitched for them pretty poorly the first couple of months of the season. Then it was revealed that he had the elbow problem, had to have Tommy John, and he's been out ever since. Now he's working his way back right now. So Joey Lucchesi is he has a better shot of making the team now because of this Quintana injury. But I do tend to think that it's going to come down to McGill or Peterson. You said that you lean towards McGill. I actually kind of lean towards Peterson, although there's definitely a case to be made for both of them. I totally agree with you from what you said about the resemblance that McGill had to Jacob deGrom when he first came up in the second half of 2021. I totally agree with you on that. I do lean towards Peterson, because I love the fact of how he's developed over the last couple of years. I really love having a lefty out there. I think having a lefty like him kind of breaks it up a little bit. But, also, I think I'm also going to have a little caveat here, because I do also think that there's a chance that we see both of them in the rotation, because it also wouldn't surprise me if maybe in the early going on even too, that Buck employs a 6-man rotation. What do you think about that, Dan? Do you think that with our group, our rotation we have right now, that the Mets could effectively run a 6-man rotation?
I think maybe every so often you're going to see that happen. A couple of starts. I can't see that happening frequently, but it's going to happen a couple of times during the season, especially when there's like going to be like weeks where there might be multiple not many off days, especially when you got Singa, who's going to be kind of have to get used to pitching a little bit more often than he would do in Japan. So that might make sense, especially in that context also. And plus, of course, maybe not to have a high workload for uh, for Verlander and the Scherzer.
Yeah, man, I definitely that's what I was thinking too, is that if you if you pull this off right, and that's the beauty of having a guy like Buck Showalter here, because with a lot of different managers, like with Luis Rojas, this is no offense to Luis, he's a very good baseball man. He just wasn't a very good manager, and there's a lot of things that go into managing. And the one thing that I really would trust Buck with is setting up a viable 6-man rotation that equally benefits each member of the rotation. Because you hit the nail on the head. That's one of the things I was thinking too, that first off, our top 2 guys in the rotation are both 39, 40 years old, so you have to protect them, because we can't have them going out throwing 230 innings next year and then turn around and ask them to throw another 50 in the postseason, or whatever it ends up being, 35, 40, 50 innings, whatever it is in the postseason. You're not asking these guys to throw 300 innings in a year or close to it, over 250 even, and these guys' arms are going to be falling off. And the same thing with Senga. Like, you hit the nail on the head with that too, man. This is a league in major leagues where these guys are used to starting 35 to or 33 to 35 games a year. That's pretty much what each guy gets if you're making your your starts every 5th day for the most part. The guys in Japan, they pitch once a week, and it's usually 25 to 28 starts a year. So you have to kind of baby Senga a little bit at first until you see how his arm reacts to pitching every 5th day. Otherwise I'd be a little, I would shy away from that, because that's another question for you, Dan. In the last couple of days, we've had Kodai Senga come up with this index finger injury. Now, he doesn't seem to think that it's really going to affect him that much. As a matter of fact, they announced that he's supposed to start again tomorrow. And if you're watching this in the day it comes out, that'll be today. So I guess you'll know better than we know right now how Senga fared. But it's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back from this, because it's pretty early on. We're seeing this first little issue pop up, and I just hope it's something that doesn't linger, right?
I don't think it's anything that's going to be a problem. It's just probably right now he probably got it out of the way. He'll probably heal properly. He'll be ready to go. Probably just one of those little bumps and bruises that you sometimes get over the course of playing. It doesn't feel like anything bad, because I've had times where I felt like finger discomfort, even at my job once, where sometimes maybe the impact when you place a heavy box on in the truck, it kind of like hit my finger a little bit, so I kind of felt that for a couple of days. So I think that's probably what he's talking about. Actually, for that matter, the index finger, is that the bird flipping finger?
Yeah. The pointer is the index, yeah.
But plus also that kind of be a bit of a scary thing. Singa, try not to overuse that when you're driving on the LIE, because you're gonna have. And again, I'm sure he'll probably be. The LIE will probably be a walk in the park, I feel, for Singa, because I hear traffic can be very heavy in Japan. I love watching travel videos there, because I've always been intrigued to visiting there. So I just feel like he'll kind of get, and from those videos I've seen, the heavy traffic, I think he'll get used to that, and probably the subways will be a walk in the park. Even though, unfortunately, the subways aren't going to be as sparkly and nice as those. I wish they were that nice, because have you seen those videos? Footage of pictures and stuff, what that's like the way they take care of the subway system there, like you kind of wish it was like that here, but
Yeah, you got that right. It's definitely a lot better than smelling bum piss and everything like that. Some guys throw up and he's on heroin next to you. That's definitely a lot better. Yeah, Japan definitely has it figured out with that stuff.
yeah, they said they somehow know how to run a public transportation agency. Also, I have to say though, that one of the things I've seen, speaking of baseball, I've seen travel videos and people have attended baseball games there, right? And fans, they have a real enthusiastic. Like, I notice how the visiting teams will usually have a whole cheering section. Kind of reminds me of the Seven Line Army, the way the visiting team has a whole cheering section like that. So I feel like Singer will feel right at home with the thanks to the Seven Line Army, because it's like what he's used to in Japan, seeing the visiting team have a cheering section. So I'm sure he'll kind of enjoy that on away games, getting to see the Seven Line Army show their they do an amazing job with their enthusiasm during away games. I've even seen opposing the broadcasters rave about how the job they've done pulling those gatherings off. I've heard at times they were impressed.
Oh yeah, man, no doubt about it. And the Seven Line is known for getting those those great gatherings together. So Met fans travel well, man. We always have. New York fans are passionate. Jet fans were all over the place last week. Giant fans were all over, or last year. I'm sorry, Giant fans, same thing. Yankee Ranger fans are all over the place, obviously. So New York fans are passionate, and we travel, and these guys are going to figure it out. Senga's going to see it firsthand next year. And Aaron Rodgers, as you see in my background, he's going to see it next year too, with a lot of these crazy Jet fans showing up all over the place, and they're just going to see firsthand how crazy and passionate us New York fans are, man. So we got a lot of fun things to look forward to this year. And as a matter of Dan, before we get out of here, do you have any plugs for yourself?
Yeah. If you think best of luck to the U.S. and the World Baseball Classic, they're
Absolutely.
in a win, and we're on to the next round in the pool play. In this first round, where we win and we advance to the next round. Also, but yeah, my social media, you can follow me, Twitter. And you could, as you see there on the screen right there, Bobo103NYC, as you're seeing on screen. Instagram, Bobo718DK. YouTube, Daniel Kurlan. And of course, if you're a fan of the show and you find me at a Met game or at an event, do definitely say hi and let me know. Same thing if you see my co-host Robert. Let him know what you think of the show, and same thing with me. If you see me, let me know of the show, and that don't be afraid to give thanks for that to let us know how much you appreciate this show that we're doing. We do.
Absolutely, we always love hearing from you. So if you see us anywhere, feel free to say hi, take a picture. We're always happy to do that kind of stuff, and especially with fans of the show and fans of our teams too.
Exactly, and get to, like I said, feel free to mention in the comments what cartoon do you think would be interesting to see being used to recreate an NHL broadcast. What cartoon do you think would you think would you want to see if they did that again? Which hopefully they don't, but if they did, what cartoon would you want to see used?
Absolutely, everybody, feel free to leave that comment and let us know your thoughts and anything like that. And also too, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can check me out at my last name Cramer NY. You can check out the show at bsith_podcast, and also on Instagram at bestseatinthehouse.com. As you see scrolling across the bottom too, don't forget, if you only want to see the podcast version of the show, the audio version, check us out wherever you get your podcasts today: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, anywhere else you can get that stuff. Feel free to check us out and give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, anything you can. And, anything you can do will help the show, help grow us, and we appreciate the support. So once again, everybody, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Best Seat in the House podcast. I'm your host, Rob Cramer. This is my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan, and this is the Best Seat in the House podcast. Let's go USA, and Aaron Rodgers, welcome New York. Catch you next week.